Hey everybody, it's John Pollock alongside Cody Saftik. We're heading into the weekend, getting ready for fights, and there's one last fight on this crazy doubleheader, Cody, as Ian McCall, who, if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck. He is off of his fight with Seery. This is the third time this year that this guy's lost a fight. This time it was himself that came down with an illness. So Seery, in what was to be his retirement fight, the rug was pulled out from under him. He is stating now he is not going to retire. But very unfortunate that this fight falls apart for Ian McCall. I mean, the Justin Scoggins fight, Ray Borg, and now here he comes down with an illness, probably weight cut related, you would assume.
I would assume so. I mean, this is a guy now that it's gone through extended training camps, and you consider you got to stay in shape for the Scoggins fight. Now you got to stay in shape for the Borg fight. And he's someone that cut a lot of weight to begin with. So you have to factor in that when they say stuff like a medical issue and they don't want to really disclose it, you have to think that it's weight cut related. And he's quite a big flyweight to begin with. But the saddest part here, as you mentioned, is that Seery is a guy that going into this fight with McCall had already announced his retirement. I'm fighting back in Ireland, in front of my hometown crowd. It's a good sending off. Now you don't get that. So he has to say, well, I won't retire. I want that one more. And now you got to go elsewhere. So I feel bad for him. For McCall, he has not competed in over 12 months now. So it's very unfortunate because he's a highly ranked contender. Now, with these guys, if they're not doing anything, they just stay stagnant. So unfortunate situation.
What's your opinion of fighters, and this went to Donald Cerrone last week, others as well, that they're going to get their show money, but they don't get their win money. And for Seery and for Donald Cerrone last weekend, they did nothing wrong. They showed up, they were ready to fight, they were on weight, and yet they get penalized because they don't get that win money that they were probably budgeting that they would be winning.
Yeah, absolutely. In McCall's case, I mean, you do give him his show money for going through that entire process, but at the end of the day, this guy's a professional athlete. When you're a 32-year-old guy like McCall, the window is getting smaller every single day, so you want to compete, and you want those big wins. And it's unfortunate that you get Scoggins, a highly ranked contender. That falls out. You get Borg, a highly ranked contender. Now you get Seery, a guy that's announced his retirement, but now you don't get nothing. So you're going to have guys that are fighting this weekend like Haraguchi and Bogatinov who are going to advance past you in the rankings. You're going to have guys like Henry Cejudo and Joseph Benavidez that are going to advance you in the rankings. Guys like Yusier Formiga, coming off a great win over Justin Ortiz in Brazil. Those guys are going to advance you in the rankings. So not only they're hurting your paycheck in the short run, in the long run, you're not getting bigger fights out of this. And it's hard to trust Ian McCall when he's had this many fights pulled through. This guy's not going to be a co-main event on a fight night, as you'd expect him to be.
Well, in fairness, the latter two the former two were really out of his control. Yes. This was the first one where it did fall on him. Now, you mentioned Ali Bogatinov and Kyoji Horiguchi, two guys that have challenged Demetrius Johnson in the past unsuccessfully. This is a great fight on paper. Of all the fights this weekend, it might be the most competitive from that kind of interest level, but it really is the kiss of death if you have fought Demetrius Johnson and not won, because it kind of does disqualify you. These are not guys that have any kind of a profile that a rematch is coming anytime soon for either individual. So you are really praying, if you're a Joseph Benavidez, if you're a Henry Cejudo or a Bogatinov and Horiguchi, that, man, I hope Demetrius Johnson slips on a banana peel December 3rd and loses this title.
Absolutely. Not only would you hope that this guy loses his title, which is very unfortunate, but at the same time, I think with guys like McGregor moving up the weight class, it's not crazy for people to put that pressure on Demetrius Johnson to, hey, abandon 125 and let the other 125ers fight it out. This is a guy that's defended his belt so many times. It's not crazy to think that a super fight at 135 is in his near future. So if he chooses to go that route and opens it up, you have to be a guy like Bogatinov waiting in the wings. Joseph Benavidez is obviously the number one guy, but because he's challenged unsuccessfully twice now, he's not going to get that immediate shot. So I think the winner of Haraguchi-Bogatinov sets himself up very nicely in the near future. And as you mentioned, this is one of the fights this weekend that I'm definitely looking forward to.
Now, quickly, mentioning the flyweights, that is the focus of the current season of The Ultimate Fighter. They're going into the semifinals on next week's episode, and then the following week, we will get the final. So you will find out Wednesday night what the main event championship fight is that Saturday for Demetrius Johnson to defend his title against. You and I have both been watching this season consistently each week, and I think it's been a pretty entertaining season. There are a lot of diamonds in the rough that they were able to grab from numerous organizations that I think could have a lot of upside. I can see a lot of these flyweights being picked up afterwards.
You know what, a year ago, I think the exact same thing. I think, man, I look at the 16 guys on the show, and I think at least of them, or 14 of them anyways, are good enough to go into the UFC right now and possibly make an impact in the division. But with the new UFC ownership, I'm not sure if they're looking to scale back roster size. So guys that we've seen on the show that have looked good, like a Matt Schnell or Yoni Sherbatov, if they're not victorious, and neither of them were, Schnell won the one fight, obviously, they're not going to get picked up, I wouldn't imagine. And I'd love to see the whole division come through. But yes, the guys like Tim Elliott that'll work his way back, and Alexander Pantola, this Eric Shelton, who's very impressive, at least in my opinion, those guys will all come in, and at least they get that TV time. That flyweight to division people don't really care about.
You've invested a lot in these flyweights for an entire season of Ultimate Fighter.
Yes.
You do want to reap some of those benefits beyond just this finale.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
All right, it's coming up this weekend. You can catch Kyoji Horiguchi and Ali Bogotinov. They are fighting. Ian McCall, Neil Seery are not, and that is coming your way from Belfast, Northern Ireland.